Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. I am the face behind the camera, so the recording, so to speak. Thanks for the 50 subscribers, shoutouts to y'all. So as per promise, I'm delivering on a couple of things, finally. I know a lot of y'all have been subscribed for quite a while, so finally making good on a promise. So, first things foremost, I'm recording through my phone, unfortunately, from my phone to OBS. I do actually have a camera here, however, it's 1080p and 30 FPS, but the issue is it is ridiculously grainy. If you think this is grainy, the camera is even more grainy. How old it is? It's... Ooh, I got this camera back when me and a friend of mine were recording a series on his channel, of which at some point maybe I'll react to a few of the old videos. Maybe for like the Christmas time, we had done a series called Black Santa versus White Santa, so maybe I'll react to some of that stuff with y'all. But also, I mean, I am planning a little bit of a thing for Christmas as well. It'll be extremely different than anything else I've done on this channel in particular, but it's familiar to my old, really old stuff. This has to be about 6 or 7 years old now. The camera has to be 6 or 7 years old now, I believe. Yeah. And I do have a wall nice and set up over here, but that'll be for another time. If y'all want to see my face in more videos, let me know. I'm not super photogenic. My girlfriend Torchic, I do not want her to be on camera necessarily, unless she wants to herself, but I would like her identity to be kept hidden for as long as possible, just to protect her and, all that good stuff. So, this will come out before Dark Souls 1, I believe, or I might release the first episode of Dark Souls 1 first. I'm gonna have to wait a little bit to get a hold of a camera for episode 3, because I'm gonna go area by area. So, yeah, that's kind of how it's gonna happen. So, I'm sorry if I'm a little bit fidgety. I just haven't had ADHD and everything. So, and also, again, I'm not quite used to being in front of a camera necessarily. I do know a lot of people are probably surprised that I'm not white. I've just grown up in the north for so long. I'm originally from the south, but moved up here when I was about 11. So yeah. Now, that's taken care of. Sit back, relax. Well, I think it's going to be a little bit uneasy as I tell this story. I think it's kind of nice for y'all to get to know me and who I am as a person and where I come from, and why sometimes my thoughts and opinions might not necessarily agree with other people's, because I do come from a different perspective in life. And the story I'm about to tell, it is my personal scariest experience, as far as it's had lasting implications that it's still kind of an issue for me to get over. Um, like, there's still some habits and everything that I still display to this day that are a result of these events, but it's not the worst situation that I've been in by far. It's actually quite tame. It's just the other situations I've been able to kind of overcome, except for this one. So, if you want to just listen, put it on in the background, listening to the story. I'm inspired by YouTuber podcast named Creepcast with Wendy Goon and Papa Meat. I would heavily suggest check out Creepcast. Absolutely fantastic. Love the stuff they do there. But on to my personal story. This is a story very personal to myself. It's not going to be easy to talk about necessarily, but I guess we should start back down south. I was living down south at this point in time. I'm trying to debate on how many details I actually want to give here. I won't give too many details here. It's a southern state. It's a southern state. Back when I was down south, I was living with my mother at the time. However, when this event happened, it was the second time me and my sister had been put into foster care. If y'all know how the foster care system works, y'all know. If you don't, it's scuffed. It's scuffed. Super scuffed. Now, when the second time we came, well, actually no, this would have been the first time we came back. So, we lived with our mom at first, and we got taken for the first time. Then we got brought back. The second time I got taken resulted in one of the worst periods of my life. Things that still kind of haunt me to this day, honestly. But, story for another time. But this event happened after the first time. So we got placed back with our mom. So this kind of happened when it happened when I was in third grade, right? However old that is, I don't even remember myself. So this happened in third grade. I was in a school that was honestly pretty well mixed in terms of white and black. There were a couple instances that happened in third grade, First and foremost, surprisingly enough, I do have some love for Yu-Gi-Oh! Specifically because of during this period of my developmental years. I was being bullied quite a lot. For my size, I was extremely skinny at the time. Um, we, I grew up po. As my grandfather would say, "They're so po that we couldn't afford the R." And which I don't know too much about my mother's financial situation, but it's just one of those things that can happen in life. The food stamp system was not good in Arkansas at the time either, so we were quite living on like peanut butter jelly sandwiches, like Captain Crunch, Hawaiian Punch, that like basic foods. So, and this would have lasting effects to where like even nowadays I was so malnourished at the time that like I have stunted growth. I should technically be like taller than what I am currently. So, but c'est la vie. That is life. But I was being bullied at the time because I was so small, and it was specifically by this other black girl. And I know her name started with an SH. I don't remember the rest of her name. But I remember what she looked like specifically. She had like little cornrows and she had like beads in her hair. Maybe it wasn't cornrows. I think it was like dreads or something. But she had glasses. She had bronze rimmed glasses and everything. But she would, call me names. She would physically, injure me sometimes. Like either give me an Indian burn, which is what it was called at the time. But you'd twist somebody's arm. She'd hit me in the arm and everything as well. And during this time, there was a lot of pressure for me to be tough, if that makes sense. Like, I had a cousin named Junior, and we were both always being compared at the time. And I was physically stronger. Well, I was physically stronger than him, interestingly enough. And I was super active at the time, to be fair, but I was physically stronger than him. Even though eventually he would grow up and like play football and stuff. So, meanwhile, I never did. I would say that I'm more mentally strong than I am physically. Even then, though, I have my weaknesses. But having to grow up being like, hey, you've got to be tough during this period of time, it wasn't easy. Do I regret it? No. I think it's very important for the ideology of you have to grow up tough, be a man. I think that is super important for mental toughness. However, I think it does need to be reinforced with an instance of, hey, there are certain situations where be tough, but not. You can be tough to a certain weakness. And that's not something that I really ever fell into. So, during this time, I was kind of reluctant, because of all of this, I was kind of reluctant to kind of come out and be like, hey, I was being bullied by a girl, of all things. I was being bullied by a girl. So first, I kind of passively mentioned it to my mother, and at some point, I talked to the teacher about it, and during this time, I was riding the bus. I was riding the school bus to and from, the apartment we were living in and here, and there was a kid that I believe he was in fifth grade that was also waiting for the bus. He had like a black binder, and I remember he had those little card sleeves, and he had a bunch of Yu-Gi-Oh cards in them. So that's where my love for that came in. And the first card that he actually gave to me was the green imp card. Oh, this is an old card. It was the old imp card that I believe was green. And it was kind of important because like he had witnessed me kind of how that kind of worked. And the only kind of thing he sort of said was like, hey, you got to talk to the principal about that. But he didn't really want to get involved, which is, I don't expect other people to get involved in that kind of situation, because that age is kind of a little bit get involved with things that you see. But at some point, it did get really bad, and we would end up me and my brother would end up talking to the principal. Nothing ever came of it, and at some point, I would talk about you know well, I'm not going to really care about age restrictions or anything like that. So, well, actually, no, I can say the other way around. I was thinking about killing myself at the point in time, and I kind of expressed his thoughts quite aggressively. I didn't necessarily go hardcore attempt into it, but again, do keep in mind, like I was in third grade at the time, and from my point of view, I didn't really have anything going for me. I was poor, getting bullied all the time, and kind of one of the only things I had left was, the Yu-Gi-Oh cards and talking about Yu-Gi-Oh with one kid on the bus, but he eventually, like, I'm assuming he moved because I never saw him after a certain point. So, like, I literally had nothing left. I had zero, and I mean zero friends at that school. And also, interestingly enough, this happened in the middle of me trying to learn cursive, and to this day, like, I don't know why this is here. But to this day, I don't know how to fully write cursive. I know how to read it, but to this day, I don't know how to fully write cursive because I would miss the rest of the year. And kind of what happened was after I expressed these thoughts or whatever, my mom would take me to the neighbor's place, and they would kind of have like I'm assuming a grown-up talk or whatever, and based on context clues now, I don't think my mother necessarily knew what to do, because it is honestly quite young to be having thoughts like this. I kind of struggled with it as well during high school as well, because I was going through I was kind of going through the ringer. There were a lot of suppressed memories that I had at the time, and I haven't had these thoughts in quite a long time. Since high school was kind of a rough period of time for me, and then because I had to keep an appearance for everybody that everything was fine, everything was going well, and I would assume that I was decently well liked, but on the inside, I was struggling, and you know. I'm assuming my mom didn't know what to do with me, so she was talking to this person, and I remember specifically, I was watching one of the Lethal Weapon movies with Danny Glover and I think his name's actually Donald Glover. I'm pretty sure that's what his name is, and Mel Gibson. I don't remember. I think it was one or three. It wasn't Lethal Weapon 2. It was Lethal Weapon 1 or 3. I think it was Lethal Weapon 3. I think it was the third one. Um, it also had Joe Pesci. I believe that's what his name is. No, I wasn't Joe Pesci. It was someone else, I think. It might have been Joe Pesci. It's just hard to remember. But I remember I was watching that, and then noticed an ambulance arrived, and I was trying to ask like, what is that for? What was it for? And The next thing that I remember is I remember being in an ambulance and I was struggling. And I mean, massively struggling to stay awake. Like, I was trying to stay aware. Um, I think I was in fight or flight mode or something like that because all I could think was, I have to be aware. I have to be aware. I need to know where I am going. But it felt like something was clawing at me to draw me back into being unconscious. Like something was just trying to force me back into sleep. I don't know if they put something in my system or something like that, but I was trying to fight as hard as possible. And I don't remember if my mother was there or not, but I remember keep waking up briefly, and I remember them trying to calm me down at some points. Um, Next thing I remember I was on a hospital bed or whatever. I remember being wheeled into some sort of facility, like some sort of hospital or whatever. And you know, then all of a sudden I'd wake up. When I woke up, I was with another guy. During this period of time, I didn't really look at myself as a kid necessarily. I don't think. Hmm. I'd, it's hard to think of a time where I really thought myself of truly as a kid necessarily, but I just thought of him as someone like as a peer. A peer was in there with me. I'm pretty sure he was older than me though. But I woke up and I was just laid right on a bed, and the sheets were beige. Like the comforter was beige, but the sheets were white, and the pillowcase was white. Things were a little bit pristine, and I woke up, and as so the bed is laying this way. The door is kind of over here, facing to where I'm facing. Over here was the other guy and the bed, and he was sitting up. And I kind of turned, and I had my feet off the bed or whatever. I had sat up. To my right was a window. The walls were also white. Everything was clean. Things were like white and super pristine. It was kind of eerie going from, a poor apartment that was somewhat dirty all the time. It wasn't terrible, but I mean, like, it wasn't super clean. Also, at this point, I don't really remember I had been sleeping on a mattress that was on the floor for so long that I didn't really. It took me a really long time to actually figure out what a headboard was. It wasn't until I came up to Michigan. Um, it wasn't until I came up here that I figured out what a headboard was, if that tells you anything. Because I rarely slept on a bed down south. At some point later on down the line, I would, instead of sleeping in a bed, which I was right next to, I had to sleep in a cot. But that story's for a later time. But when I woke up, this room was super pristine. It was super weird. And this guy, I guess, he was telling me that he had been here for a little while, and he said that I would probably get transferred somewhere else probably, and he told me that I was in a mental hospital, which I was like, what? What? And then I look out the window, and I am super high up, and I'm also kind of scared I was really terrified of heights at this time. I'm still not a huge fan of heights, but I could somewhat handle them now. Like, I can handle them calmly, but back then I kind of freaked out. And after talking to the guy for a little bit, I guess he had opened up a car door and attempted to jump out, which I believe I had tried to do at some point, but I think somebody had grabbed me. But this is one of those memories that the car memory for me personally is a little bit. If this indeed happened, I tried to jump out of a car. This happened a long time ago, and so I barely remember now. But the guy was telling me that he had tried to jump out of a car, and then I was telling him about my side, and he was like, I was like, oh, that's like he's like, yeah, you're kind of young to be in here, and at that point, I think like a bell rang or something like that, and I didn't really know what that meant because I didn't really experience an orientation. I was basically carted off to here without my knowledge, and I he told me he was like, hey, we have to go outside and we have to sit down on one of the side of the door. And so I was like, oh, okay. And we kind of sat outside or whatever. We came out and we were like in an actual hospital. It was a little bit strange. It was such a weird experience. But we haven't gotten to the scariest part yet. And they came by or whatever. I don't remember too much of the events of this place, but eventually I would be put in a room with someone else. And at this point, I believe they have prescribed me some medications. I don't really know. It was one of those situations where you would kind of go up to a window, kind of like how a bank teller, and they would kind of slide you your medicine. They would make sure you take it. But somebody else would be on the opposite side of that to make sure you take it and everything. And I was like, oh, okay. I didn't have to take any medicine at first, but at some point I did, uh, which was a little bit strange. And when I got put into this new room, there was another kid who was about my age, and I remember he had like blue pajamas with like orange spots on them, and he had like it was like a onesie or whatever, and he seemed nice enough. And the first day happened. The first day I was in the same room as him. I went out and I watched Alvin and the Chipmunks. The old cartoon version. It was like on one of those box TVs. I was on a cart. I had never really even experienced a flat screen TV until some years later. So, we watched Alvin and the Chipmunks. I watched a little bit of Hercules. Went through the cycle of going down. It was also the first day I went down to one of the lower floors to the cafeteria and eat. And there they had Nickelodeon on, so that's the only place I watched like LT Gray, for example, that dates it at all. But second day, you know, the usual, nothing really happened again. I was also addicted into some anger management thing. It was quite weird because I didn't really do any schooling there necessarily until I wasn't allowed to do any of the like lower floor activities because I guess that was deemed high risk, so they wouldn't let me do like arts or crafts like for quite a long time. They wouldn't let me really, and they didn't really have me interact with very many people. And on the second night is when it happened. So, go into the room. All of the rooms, both rooms are the same, except there was no window in this one, with this other kid. And, the door is facing the foot of my bed. The open door is facing the foot of my bed. And the doors are never shut, kept closed, unless everybody is out of that room. But they're left open, basically. And, room was a little bit more lit on my end, but, on his end, it wasn't because he was to my right. And so, I was sleeping, I was sleeping towards the wall because I usually preferred to sleep, on my sides at that point in time. I didn't like sleeping on my back. I never have. And when I wake up to this kid, hands wrapped around my throat, and he's like on top of me, and he's like trying to strangle me. And thankfully, I was kind of a little bit stronger, so we started scuffing. Like I tried to push him off and everything, and he was heavier than I am because I was kind of small. And however, at some point, I started hitting him in the face. I was strong for the size that I was. and he didn't, his grip laxed, but it didn't quite let go. And, you know, I started screaming and everything, and you could hear both of us kind of like shouting and everything. And, you know, the door was still open, and then I hear the running of footsteps while this dude is still trying to strangle me. At this point, I did manage to get his grip off of my neck, and I was trying to wrestle him off of me. I was kind of in an awkward position though. I was also like under the comforter, under the blanket, and it was rough. And they kind of rushed in. They pulled him off of me, and at that point, I was kind of just shocked. I was shocked. I didn't really know. I was just kind of stuttering, and I was like, he was on top of me, he was strangling me, and the other kid was shouting and screaming at me. And I remember he had a little beige bear with him too, that they took and when they shipped him out, and they were kind of talking to me and everything. And surprisingly enough, they actually believed me. They actually believed me, which was a first for me at this point. Um, because before this, I was basically had been treated as a pure liar that never spoke the truth. Any sort of situation that happened, my sister was always believed. Even after this instance, it was quite rare for anyone to believe that I was telling the truth, which would come again later as well, during a period of time where, like, my darkest hour, basically, which wasn't at this point. And they left me in that room by myself, and there were some. Didn't really have any incidents after that. At some point, I was allowed to do some crafts. I don't really know how much time I spent in there. The flow of time from there on was quite strange. It was kind of a blur with some rare instances sticking out. And at some point, I was allowed to be let go. I didn't really have like suicidal thoughts while I was there, but later on, of course, I would continue to struggle with thoughts of it. However, all in all, being at that hospital, to this day, I do not sleep with my back to the door, especially when I'm by myself. I don't, because I need to have a quick escape route. Um, the only time I sleep with my, make sure that I sleep with my back to the door. Oh my God, could this, please. Anytime I sleep with my back to the door, my girlfriend's there. Usually, how we have our bed set up is so I myself actually I sleep furthest away from the door, so kind of how our bed works. Bed's in another room, door to the left. I sleep closer to the window. That's also where I keep my axe, my Leviathan axe from God of War. That's where I keep that, so then I can just reach over, grab it, and swing if someone were to be in that direction. The only time though I sleep this way, I sleep with my back to the doors when Torchic's there. Because, you know, if something happens, I'm going to hear it. And I'm going to wake up. I'm also a relatively light sleeper unless I'm exhausted. But there have been instances where I've slept talk and everything as well, which usually happens when I'm stressed out. But she's kind of the only person that I trust to really be sleeping in the same room as. Because even when I've slept over at other people's houses, I have to sleep with my back to the wall. Like, I have to sleep facing the door. Like, even if, like, I'm sleepy, like, I will make, you know, if I'm sleepy and facing the wall, I will make sure that I force myself awake and switch positions. I will say, that experience, though, did help me it did help prepare myself for the trials that I would have to go through later for moving up north. so I'm not exactly necessarily despise that experience or anything. Yeah, it was quite a scary time. It's quite a scary time. But that's the end of that little story. If y'all have any questions, let me know in the comments below. Um, I don't know very many people that have even been in a mental hospital, so I don't have any other people's experiences to kind of compare to. Like, it's kind of ironic with the amount of people that I've worked with that, they say things like, oh, I'm insane, I'm crazy and everything. And, they talk about mental issues and everything, and it's like, I am the only person here that's actually been in a mental hospital. I'm the only person here that's actually been in one. I know what it's like, and I don't ever want to go back to that. I want to stray away from it. Just that level of isolation, being that young and being isolated for so long, and really not being able to trust anyone, I had massive trust issues for a long time. And it wasn't just because of this, it was also because of another foster family that I was living with after this incident. That, like, my trust in people kind of broke for a very, very long time. But part of me has always kind of struggled with the need for companionship and being close to someone because, my emotions have problem like my inner self wants to be close with some people, but at the same time, my logical brain is like, hey, it's not a good idea just to let people get close to you willy-nilly. Which is why I have very strict rules on, like, who reaches friendship status. Like, I have very, very few actual friends. Online stuff is a little bit different, but also you don't really know people online necessarily. But, there's a difference to me between close acquaintances and friends. Friends, I'd be willing to trust them way more than, like, close acquaintances. Which I have a lot of close acquaintances, but very, very few friends. To this day, I only have, like, actually, like, 3 people outside of my girlfriend to really, no, 2. There's 3. 3 people to actually have achieved friendship, like, actual friend status with me currently. Some people I fell out of contact with, and that's perfectly fine. Just to keep myself protected, because this wasn't the only instance where I trusted someone, to not kill me in this instance, but it's not the first instance that I would have to trust that someone that I trust would backstab me. And going through the experiences that I've had, I've learned that the closest of people can backstab you. So be careful who you pick and choose on who you trust and how much you trust them. Now, my girlfriend I trust because we have to rely on each other. We just do. She doesn't want to go back to her situation, and I don't have a situation to go back to. I don't have any family anywhere really close to me, and I'm not a huge fan of the blood is thicker than water and everything. I don't really have any friends that are close by either. So, yeah, I kind of have you guys, I would like to build a community, some point, way later on down the line, maybe I'll make a Discord or whatever. Um, but I kind of want to create a place, where people are not necessarily like-minded than me, because I do know some people might have different political views from me. I know someone that's thinks lizard people are real, but I don't mind them as a person, and I enjoy the Souls games, so I cover those. I treat this channel as more of a hobby, um, more as a hobby than anything else in an actual profession. But I do hope this video isn't too long. If y'all kind of enjoy this, drop a sub, you know. Yeah, and you know what? Like the video, If y'all don't like this kind of thing, let me know. If this is too personal, let me know that. But I also do kind of want some record on myself on here, and I don't really like the YouTubers that don't have any sort of personality on their channel. Like I hate like people like Mr. Beast, even though like that, but out before that whole controversy, I don't like super corporate, you know, stuff. And I respect content creators that are willing to step out of their comfort zone. Like there's the old fucking trio of Craner, Jelly, and Slogo, if you know who they are. They have like a two-thirds podcast, which was actually a lot of fun, to listen to and everything. So, as content, evolves as we age. Well, not well, we. I I can actually see analytics now, and a decent of y'all are either my age or older. I'm 23 myself. Um, but yeah, I kind of just, it is personally my scariest experience that has had the most lasting impact. It's not the worst situation that I've been in by far. It's not even in the top three. So, however, the other three situations were either out of my control, like completely out of my control, or I didn't really realize how bad it was until I got out of it. Which is the case for two of those. And I'm not necessarily saying it was my fault and in third grade, almost being choked to death, but part of me does feel like that I could try to trust people now, but it's just that memory will kind of linger for the rest of my life, and that's just something I have to live with. But yeah, on that note, thanks for tuning in. More Dark Souls 3 stuff will be happening, and a collab will be happening soon. It'll be my first with another YouTuber here, and if this other friend of mine wants to stream the dealio, and well, if he's gonna start getting back into streaming and everything, I will also link him as well. But we're gonna be fusing two things that exist here on the channel, so I'm kind of excited. For upcoming plans. I do plan on getting a camera. That being said, will it be shown in a lot of videos? No. Unless y'all want to see my face more often. I don't necessarily believe that I have to put a face to the channel. But, for certain instances, I do have a lovely wall over here that I would like to work on a little bit more, and then, I'll show y'all at some point. Unless I already have. I think I already posted on it about it. But yeah, on that note, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate the 50 subs, Stick around for more Souls content. Maybe Destiny 2. We still don't know the raid situation, but if there are no raids, I'm not playing Destiny 2. I only play Destiny 2 for the raids, and dungeons are a little bit there as well, but I need raids. I just do. Because I love guiding new people through raids, so that's like the thing that I like to do. But, I haven't done it recently. I've been too busy playing First Descendant, so... I don't necessarily know what I want to do for 100 subs. If I actually get a lot of questions in under this video, because I personally don't really think I'm big enough yet to do a Ask Me Anything thing. But if y'all want, post some questions, post them in the comments. Maybe I'll answer them at the 100 sub mark. That'll be the next goal. And as far as editing and stuff goes, I'm going to try to do a little bit better. As far as that's concerned. But 100 subs, I will either, if I get enough questions, I'll do a questionnaire with Torchic as well. So y'all can hear her and she can answer some questions as well. I'll either do that, or I will showcase a game that I have I'll maybe start a thing where I showcase a game that is very surprising, that I've never even shown any interest of on the channel, but I have a crap ton of hours in. So there are quite a few games like that. But on that note, thanks for tuning in. Appreciate y'all. And I'll catch y'all on the flip side.